let's look at one final example. But before we get into this too far, I want to remind you of one of our things to remember over here on the opposite page. And that is that when setting up a polynomial long division, we need to use a 0 as a placeholder if any of the terms are missing between the highest power and the constant. So keeping that in mind, I notice that although problem number 3 is in standard form, we are missing an x term and we are missing a constant term in this polynomial. We are also missing an x term in this polynomial because I go from a 2 to a constant without a plain x. So keeping that in mind, let's write our long division. So I'm going to start off with my divisor, x squared plus 0x. It's very important that you put that in. And then minus 16. In addition to that, we're going to write our dividend, 4x to the third minus 4x squared. And then, as I mentioned, we have to have a placeholder for the x term and for the constant. Remember that everything has to align vertically, and if we don't have these terms in here, then it doesn't work. All right, so let's go ahead and start dividing. We're going to use the same system that we've done before. We're going to ask ourselves, how many times will x squared go into 4x to the third? So coming over to the side here, 4x to the third divided by x squared, and that's going to give me a 4x. Remember that we want to write that above the x place for the quotient, so it goes up here above that 0x. Now I multiply 4x times every one of these terms. And so 4x to the third plus 0x squared. And then 4 times negative 16 is a negative 64x. And I'm ready to subtract the entire polynomial. Parentheses, please, to make sure that you subtract everything. 4x to the third minus 4x to the third is 0, so we don't have to write that. Next, I have negative 4x squared minus a 0x squared. Well, that's just going to be negative 4x squared. Then I have 0x minus a negative 64x. Those two minuses make a plus 64x. And now I'm ready to bring down my next term, which is a 0. How many times will x squared go into negative 4x squared? So negative 4x squared divided by x squared is going to give me a negative 4. So that becomes the next term in my quotient. So minus 4, and now I want to take that negative 4 and multiply it by every one of these terms. So negative 4 times x squared is going to give me a negative 4x squared. Times 0 is going to give me a 0x. And negative 4 times negative 16 is going to give me a positive 64. And I'm ready to subtract the entire polynomial. One more time. Negative 4x minus a negative 4x cancels. 64x minus 0 is 64x, and then 0 minus 64 is minus 64. I don't have any more terms to bring down, so that becomes my remainder. And remember, we write quotient and then plus remainder over divisor. So our quotient is 4x minus 4 plus 64x minus 64 divided by, and now for our divisor we would write it this way. We don't put the extra zeros in a final answer. So x squared minus 16.